So yesterday, sorry. So yesterday we started with the second part of the third module. So what is that? That is audio compression. So we'll just revise what we did yesterday. Okay. So how we started? We said that the storage requirements of sound are smaller than those of images or movies, which is obvious because images and movies, especially movies, range in the space of gigabytes, right? And text, usually I gave the example of a book, typically it takes 2 to 3 MBs, right? But sound requires more than 2 to 3 MBs and movies require more than that of sound, right? So sound lies somewhere in between, right? So since text requires compression, obviously sound should also require compression. So what are the features of audio compression? We saw that. What are those? It can be lossy and it requires fast decoding, right? So why we require fast decoding? Because we again took the example of what for video compression we took the example of MX Player, right? Let's just check whether I am recording. Yeah. Let's minimize this. Yeah. So why we require fast decoding? We took the example of MX Player in a smartphone. So if you click on a video file, it should immediately start playing. So if the player says decoding 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, etc. so that won't work out, right? Because we want the file to play as soon as we click on the file, right? So fast decoding is very important. But what about the encoder? Encoder can be 100 times more complex than the decoder because it is done beforehand, right? So if you have a file, means it's already encoded file. That is what we mean here by complex, right? So text compression must obviously be lossless, because if there is even a small alphabet change, it might create problems, right? But images and audio can lose much data. Thus there are both lossless and lossy audio compression algorithms, right? So then this is a very important slide. So what does this give? This gives hearing threshold, and remember it is for a quiet environment. I forgot to mention this in the last lecture. So x-axis is frequency and this is the y-axis is the hearing threshold in dB. So this is the demarcating line. So whatever is above the line, those levels can be heard by the ear, right? And whatever is below cannot be heard, right? So this can be compressed, because this anyways we are not going to hear, so no need of them keeping in the file. So this is what we thought about hearing threshold, right? And we also said from 2 kHz to 4 kHz the ear is very sensitive, because it can hear levels up to the levels of 0 dB also, almost. Okay. So then we studied masking of sound, again very important from exam point of view. So there were two types of masking, frequency or auditory masking, and the second was temporal masking. So what was frequency masking? This is our usual last slide diagram only, hearing threshold. So at 8 kHz, if we have a very high sound, for example that of a cannon or a supersonic jet, as we took the example yesterday, what it does, it increases the hearing threshold in the vicinity. So if in the same increased threshold in the vicinity, if we have another sound at a frequency x, what we see, it is below the threshold, right? So ideally it should have been listened by us, but since there is a huge other sound, it is getting masked by this higher black thin line, right? So this is what is frequency masking. So a efficient encoder should do what? It should not encode this frequency x, that is this sound, right? So this is how compression can be achieved, because anyways we are not going to hear, so no need to keep it in, right? So this is what frequency or auditory masking. So next we talked about frequency 27 approximate reticle bands. It is not that important from exam point of view, so we'll skip this. So then we studied temporal masking. So if you have a very high sound, what is meant by temporal? Temporal means depending on time. That is why on x-axis now we have time. Previously we had what? Frequency. So it was frequency masking, right? So if I have a sound, very high sound at t equal to 0 milliseconds, that if it has an effect further down till 500 milliseconds also. That is what this graph shows. So if you have another sound at 10 milliseconds, it is getting clearly masked away by this high sound. But the sound at 20 milliseconds is not getting masked, right? It is clearly seen here. So these lines indicate the sounds. So 10 milliseconds is getting masked and 20 milliseconds is not getting masked. So again our encoder should be able to see this. So it should mask the 10 millisecond sound but not mask the 20 millisecond sound. So this type of masking is called based on time, so it is called as temporal masking. Right? Then we started with lossy sound compression. So it is possible to get better sound compression by what? Developing lossy methods that take advantage of our perception of sound. So hearing threshold graph we saw, so whatever is below that should be removed from the file. And if you take the example of frequency masking, this frequency at x kilohertz should be removed because they are not going to be heard. So this is perception of sound, right? So this is similar to lossy image compression. So then we study silence compression. What is it? So we treat the small samples as if they were silence. Means if there is silence, nothing needs to be transmitted, right? So this is silence compression. So and it is a variant of RLE. So we saw further some things regarding to that. So then we took the very important topic of compending. So what is compending? It is nothing but compression and expansion. It stands for. It is taken from those two words. So we said that at low amplitudes, very high information is contained. So there should be more precise samples at low amplitudes and less precise at higher amplitudes. So what should be the quantization here? It should be finely quantized, right? And less precise should be coarsely quantized. So then this is not important. So then compending is non-linear. Because why is it non-linear? Because more precise samples are at low amplitudes and less precise at higher amplitudes. So quantization is changing, right? So here it is fine, here it is coarse. That's why compending is non-linear. So how we achieve compression using compending? For example, for 16-bit samples, we can encode using this formula, and this formula will give an output of 15 bits, right? So again, getting the original 16 bits, we use a decoder. So if we use that mapped expression here and use this formula, we will get the sample, original sample, which will be of 16 bits. So we are decompressing it. But what is the problem? We are only compressing 16 bits to 15 bits. So only one bit is getting reduced. So less compression is achieved. So what we do? So instead of using this high number 32767, we replace it by 127. So if you replace this by 127, what happens? 16-bit number, instead of getting reduced to 15 bits, now gets reduced to what? 8 bits, right? So compression ratio achieved is how much? 0.5. So then we took the example of 60,100, and we saw that if you use 60,100 to convert from 16 bits to 15 bits, we get around 29,105, right? So 16 bits were converted to 15 bits. Then we, instead of 32767, we used 127. So we got, the number was around 180, I suppose. So we got almost 0.5 compression ratio, right? So what was the problem in decoding? If you use 32767, it was highly erratic, right? Because errors were introduced low. But what was the advantage when you replaced it by 127? We knew the compression ratio in advance, right? So depending on the compression ratio, we said we can change this value of 32767 to our convenience. So accordingly we can achieve the compression ratio. So next we studied there are two compending types. What are those? Mu law compending and A law compending. So mu law and A law compending are used in North America and Japan, while mu law is used in North America and Japan, while A law is used elsewhere, right? And mu law uses 14-bit samples as input, while A law uses 13-bit samples. And the two methods differ in the quantization, which is mid-trade and mid-ranges. So these three differences are there. Then you can draw the diagram. So as I said last lecture, these are important questions, difference between mu law and A law compending. So again, low amplitudes of speech contain more information, therefore we use non-linear quantization, and smaller samples should be obviously finely quantized, right? So then mu law encoder inputs what? 14-bit samples and outputs 8-bit code words, right? So this was the formula, we will not discuss that. So this was very important. Again, the question comes on this. Usually they might give you a number and they will ask you to find the segment code and quantization code. So what you have to do? You have to use this formula. So we have taken the example of minus 656. So since it is minus, P will be 1. Then using this procedure we find the segment code, and then from that bit position which we get in the segment code process, we use it for quantization code following that, right? And the encoder ignores the remaining bits of the input sample, right? So for decoding, again we have the inverse formulas. So this is what we use for decoding, right? So this is what we used yesterday. correct? And this was the diagram which you have to do. So let's proceed further. So next type of compounding is A law. What we have studied, it was mu law. Why it is called as mu law? Because in the formula they have used mu. Because of this symbol mu, it is called as mu law. So then we have A law compounding. So what does A law compounding do? The A law encoder generates an 8-bit code word again. So yesterday I said we will see for the difference between mu law and A law compounding question. Let's see tomorrow what is the difference for output samples. So what is the output of mu law? It is 8 bits. What is it for A law? For A law also it is 8 bits, right? So there is no difference with regards to the output. But with regards to input, there is a difference, because mu law uses 14-bit samples as input, while A law uses how much? 13-bit samples. Where were we? Yeah. So again the A law encoder generates an 8-bit code word with the same format as the mu law encoder. What does this mean? So this is the format for mu law, right? So this same format, that is P, the parity bit, segment code S2, S1, S0 of 3 bits, Q3, Q2, Q1, Q0, quantization code of 4 bits is same. This same format is used by A law, right? So what does the B bit do? P bit do? It again sets the sign of the input sample. So then what we do? Obviously we determine the segment code and quantization code. So if you see this procedure, this is similar to the procedure which we described for mu law. Okay. So I will not take an example. So I will just tell you the procedure. But in the exam they might give you a number and ask you to solve this. Okay. So the encoder determines the segment code by determine the bit position of the most significant 1 bit among the 7 most significant bits of the input. Remember it is what 7 here. Yesterday we saw it was different. Yesterday it was bit position was most significant bit among bits 5 through 12 only. Now it is among the 7 most significant bits. There it was 12 to 5, right? So if such a 1 bit is found, the segment code becomes that position minus 4. Otherwise, if this condition is not satisfied, the segment code becomes 0, right? Then we have to find the quantization code. So we find that the 4-bit quantization code is set to the 4 bits following the bit position determined in step 1, or to half of the input value if the segment code is 0. So this is the same as the previous thing. Right. Then about decoding. So again 8-bit code word which was the output of encoder will be used as the input, that is obvious. So we should get a 13-bit audio sample as output. So how we get that? So we use this procedure. First invert the bit P and the even numbered bits of the code word. Then what you have to do, if the segment code is non-zero, the decoder multiplies the quantization code by 2 and increments this by the bias 33. So same as the mu law compounding. So the result is then multiplied by 2 and raised to the power of the segment code minus 1. This is different, remember. What we did for mu law decoder, multiply the result by 2 raised to the power of segment code. Here what we are doing, multiply by 2 first and raise it to the power of the segment code minus 1. And if the segment code is 0, the decoder outputs twice the quantization code plus 1. So that's simple if segment code is 0. And bit P is then used to determine the sign of the output. Then we saw, so this is the mid-riser quantization graph. So what is the difference between this mu law and A law in the graph? Here it is symmetric about the x-axis, right? Here it is along the y-axis, right? So that is the difference. So then we have MPEG audio encoding. So this is the next topic. So we are done with compounding. Okay. So then we have MPEG audio encoding. So what is this? So this is nothing but our sort MP3 format, right? So this is the encoder and decoder block diagram, right? So just concentrate over this. You don't have to by heart this block diagram. You can just remember the blocks, but don't by heart what has to be written for each and every block. So for that you just concentrate here. So what we have as input, obviously we should have an audio input, right? So the audio input is our pulse code modulated input, right? So then it is given to the frequency domain map. So the first question you should have is why we use frequency domain, right? So for that let's go to the very first or second slide which we use. this was the slide, right? So hearing threshold, it is given in what terms? It is given in frequency. So x-axis is frequency. So sound is usually measured in frequency, right? So that is the reason we have the first block as frequency. So let's go to that slide. So have you understood why we are having first frequency? So this is a in what audio samples. So we are converting those audio samples to frequency domain, right? So what you have to write here, I have just noted down in simple forms. So the frequency domain mapping is done in the sort of filters, form of filters. And what those filters do? The filters divide the audio samples into 32 equal subbands. So what they do again? They divide the audio samples into 32 equal subbands. Okay. So what are these subbands and how they are calculated, that we'll see in the next further slides. So then psychoacoustic models are used, and through these psychoacoustic models the frequency of the sound for compression is determined. Okay. So what is that? So that we'll see here. Okay. But what happens when we divide the samples into subbands? We are doing some compromises. So for that I have noted down in notes here. So what are the compromises? The first compromise is that the equal widths of 32 frequency subbands. So as I said, these subbands are there, they are of equal widths. So what problem this does? This simplifies the filters, but what problem it does? This simplifies the filters, but is in contrast to the behavior of the human auditory system, whose sensitivity is frequency dependent, right? So since they are 32 equal frequency subbands, but our auditory system is designed to be frequency dependent, right? So it will create a problem, right? So then the original time to frequency transformation obviously will include loss of information. So some information is lost there. So that is the second compromise. What is the third compromise? It has to do with the individual filters. Adjacent filters should ideally pass different frequency ranges, but as we saw, they are having equal subbands. So in practice they have a considerable frequency overlap. Okay. So these are the problems. So you can just refer them from here. Okay. So this is about what? Frequency domain mapping. So again, why we require frequency domain mapping? Because these are audio samples, right? So they need to be converted into frequency domain, because we saw in the hearing threshold side, it is usually in the form of frequency. So next, psychoacoustic model. So what it does? It studies how sound is perceived by the ear and by the brain, right? And decides how much of the audio data can be removed while still retaining an acceptable sound. So this is basically, it just uses frequency, it just has the algorithms for frequency and temporal masking. So here it is, what is written, decides how much of the audio data can be removed. So how will it decide? So again we can go to that masking slide. So from this diagram we saw that frequency at 8 kHz should be removed, right? So that psychoacoustic model is the one which decides which frequency component should be removed. So based on this data, it will decide that frequency at X kHz should be removed. Let's go to the slide which we are using. Yeah. So this is what is done by what? Psychoacoustic model. Next, what we have? So this is the general step: bit or noise allocation, quantizer, and encoding. So in all the text and image compression and video compression methods, we saw the penultimate or the ultimate step is what? Encoding. So either they use QM coder or Huffman coding or arithmetic coding, right? So this is that step. So subband signals are first packaged into frames of 384 or 1152 signals each, and then signals in each of these frame are then scaled, quantized, and again coded according to the psychoacoustic model and bit allocation algorithm. So, and that coding can be any form of coding like Huffman, arithmetic, etc. Okay. So it depends on the MP3 layer what they have decided. So again, it is, they may not give us which encoding they are using. So we cannot say what exactly they are using. Then as we saw in the last time, so we have the formats for the stream. So they will have the headers and footers, etc. So that is output stream formatting. What it does, it arranges the stream according to the standard format consisting of headers, CRC, synchronization code, etc. What is CRC? It is cyclic redundancy check. So it is a sort of error correction and detection code. So once this is done, finally we get the compressed out. So this is about what? Encoder. right? So what we do the decoder, so this output is given as input to the decoder, so it unpacks the data, and then frequency sample reconstruction. So that is from this data it is again getting the frequency component. Then since we have done frequency domain mapping, so from frequency domain mapping again we get the original decoded PCM module. Okay, so then I said how this frequency domain mapping converts into 32 subbands here, right? So let's see that. So this is the what is happening inside the frequency domain mapping. So what we have audio samples here, right? So what the frequency domain mapping block does is it takes the first 32 samples, so it puts them in the first in first out buffer, which is named as in the standard format as X. So it takes those, then it shifts them to the right. When the next 32 samples will come, it will shift them to the right, then it will next 32 samples will come. So like this it can store up to total 512 samples. So once these 512 samples are complete, what it does, they have a coefficient vector C. So we saw in DCT that there is a quantization table, it is given by the JPEG team, right? So in the same way this coefficient vector C consists of coefficient values which are given by the MPEG team. So it multiplies this each 32-bit numbers by this coefficient vector, so that we get each 32 numbers here in the blocks here. But what it does for the temporary vector Z is it takes 2 times 32, that is it makes one block of 64 samples. So like this it will make total 0 to 512, right? So it will be how much? I think it will be 8. So this will be 8 matrices. I suppose you can just divide 512 by 64, then you will get that. So next what we do, so these are rows, right? So the software or the algorithm will convert them to columns and then add them. So after adding them we will get a vector Y. So this vector Y is how much size? 64. So this 64 is again taken as a row and multiplied by a modified DCT transform. So again we are using DCT, right? So this is 1 by 64, this is 64 by 32. So we get a column vector of 32 subband signals. So what we have done, 32, the audio samples we have converted to 32 equal subbands, right? So this is what is done by the encoder during filtering step. So what happens here, frequency to time domain, so that we'll see in the decoder step. So we have that original 31-bit samples. So this subband signals are nothing but taken here. So and corresponding to the MDCT we have IMDCT, that is the inverse transform. So we multiply them, we again get 64 vectors, right? So in the same way that these 32 samples will be coming from the audio, right? Will continue, the audio samples will be continuously coming. So in the same way these 32 samples will continuously be coming. So we'll have that first 64 vector V, so we'll fill them in the FIFO buffer. So once 1024 samples are completed, it will give them in the vector 2. So this vector 2 will be divided into 32 bits, again 32 samples, sorry. So once these 5 and 2 are filled, it will have a predefined window D. So here coefficient vector C was predefined. So in the same way window D is predefined. So it will multiply them and give the vector W. So from W it will again convert those columns to rows, add them to finally get the reconstructed sample. So this is how the decoder works. Okay. So this is about MPEG audio encoding. So this is a 10 marks question. So just follow this guidelines and you can write the answer. So the next question is the decoder fast? So obviously it has to be fast, right? So that is what we said. If you are again playing a audio file, it starts playing immediately. It doesn't say decoding 1%, 2%, etc. Is the decoder fast? Yes, obviously. So if you see, there are more blocks compared to the decoder. So, and what is done here, we have a psychoacoustic model. What it does, it finds which things are can be compressed. So that is not required here, right? Because it has already removed those parts. So that is the reason decoder is fast as compared to the encoder. So this question is, so the answer to this question is yes. Okay. So this is one of the topics which is not covered in this module. So DPCM and ADPCM used in audio compression. So you will find it in section 7.6, page 742 of Solomon. Okay. So, and I have also noted down here, if you want to go further what is happening. I have noted down the sections here. This is taken from section 7.3, page 727, Solomon book. Okay. So that also you can refer. And finally, this has mainly, the PPT has mainly been made from the Solomon book, chapter audio compression, in the book data compression, the complete reference, and the MPEG audio encoding. Some of the concepts were taken from this YouTube video, so you can refer this as well if you want for extra information. Okay, thank you.